In this video, we're going to talk about the number one issue when it comes to remote schooling. It's how you get and stay connected to the internet, or more specifically, why Wi-Fi sucks and what you can do about it. Hi. My name's Dave Copeland. I'm a parent and a technology expert. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to be bringing you a few technology top tips that are going to help you make the best of your remote schooling experience. Now, like most people, I'm sure you've had your own trials and tribulations in getting Wi-Fi to work reliably. It's a funny old technology, really, isn't it? Because it's amazing on one part and it gives us such freedom and we rely on it every day. But in reality, it's kind of fraught with problems. You've had those experiences, I'm sure, when you've been, maybe there's a few of you using the internet at the same time. Maybe someone switched a microwave on in our house. It's when the dog walks past the router and all of a sudden the Wi-Fi drops, or maybe the internet gets really, really slow and you get really frustrated. And that's kind of part of the problem, isn't it? Especially when it comes to remote schooling, because if you haven't got a reliable connection to the internet, you're not going to have a reliable remote schooling experience. And that's not great for your kids, and it's massively frustrating for you. Now, the good news is there's a few really simple things we can do to improve your connectivity, to help that remote schooling experience. And also, if you're working from home, your working experience better. And I'm going to tell you how. But before we do that, what we have to do is just briefly explain a little bit about how Wi-Fi works. So I get my connection, it comes into the house. In my case, it's a telephone line. Pretty much for most people, it's a telephone line. Sometimes it's fiber and all the rest. And this device takes that connection and then it turns it into radio waves, turns it into Wi-Fi that's transmitted through the house. But like I mentioned, the signal's really, really weak. The radio waves that are used by Wi-Fi are weak and they don't like traveling over long distances. They don't like traveling over the walls. They interfere. They're on the same frequency as your microwave, by the way. That's why if you turn your microwave on, if it's near your router, you'll notice that there's interference. And so if we want to think about how we get the best connectivity, we've really got to spend some time thinking about our old pal, the router here, because the way that we treat the router, the way we place the router, the way we connect to the router holds the key to your success in delivering a great connected remote school experience. So what can you do to make your remote schooling connection the best it can possibly be? I actually think there's three super simple things that you can do to make your experience the best it possibly can be. Number one, learn to love your router. Your router, carries everything that you do on the internet, to and from the internet. It's your most important part of your connection to the internet. So give it a little love. The best love you can give your router is actually to reboot it. Now, at least once a week. Sometimes it might even be once a day. Because if you can imagine the kind of task that the router has to do, taking all of that information from the internet and bringing it to you, taking all of your information, taking it to the internet, sometimes it gets a bit clogged up and a bit bogged down. Now, it massively depends on what kind of router you've got, but it's actually quite good practice to reboot your router once a week, maybe once a day. The start of the school week would be a great time, and you'll probably notice a massive performance increase. That's tip number one. Now, my second tip might feel a bit controversial. Let's ditch Wi-Fi. And look, we rely on Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi's been wonderful to us, hasn't it? But we know that there are certain problems. And in something as important as remote schooling, we actually want the best possible connection. And if you want the best possible connection, then there's a really simple thing that you can do. It's to use this old-fashioned technology. It's called a cable. It's actually called a network cable. And simply, if you plug this device into the back of your router and you plug the opposite end into the back of your computer, hey presto, not only have you got a reliable internet connection, you've got one that will be up to 50 times faster than Wi-Fi. An amazing, simple cable. The other beautiful thing about these cables is you can run them over great lengths. So they'll go up to about 100 meters. And I certainly know families who, when it comes to lessons, remote schooling, they will, for that time, they will plug in a cable and it will run from wherever their router happens to be, in the Aryan cupboard, in the front room, whatever it might be. And the cable goes out of the front room, up the stairs and into the room where the kids are doing their schoolwork, just for lessons. And when you do that, you've got this perfect connection. Now look, there's a couple of caveats. The main thing is you've got to make sure that your computer has a network port. Now, if you're using a normal laptop or a normal desktop, that's fine. You might be using a tablet, you might be using a slim laptop, you might be using a phone, in which case you might need to use a dongle. I would probably advise, if you're using a phone or a tablet, stick with Wi-Fi. If you're using any kind of computer, then even if you have to get a dongle as well, I would really recommend connecting. Going hardwired to the internet will give you the best, most reliable and the fastest connection to remote schooling. Okay, so you've decided that ditching Wi-Fi is a bit too extreme and we're going to stick with Wi-Fi. So here's my third tip about how you make Wi-Fi the best it can be. Number one, think about your old friend, the router. The router is your best friend when it comes to making this work. So you want to be near the router, as near to the router as you possibly can be. So maybe there's a communal space that you have in the house. Maybe it's the space where you do your work and the kids do their schoolwork. Get the router in that room if you can. And I know sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it may even be as simple as getting one of those telephone cable extensions and plugging it into your wall socket and allowing you to move the router. But so number one is, if you can move the router, move it to somewhere that's close to you. If you can't move the router, there's a couple of other things that you can do that sometimes make a difference. Now, I'll warn you, A, they cost a little bit of money, maybe sometimes between sort of 30 to 70 pounds. And secondly, some of them can be a little bit complicated to set up. So the first is called Wi-Fi extenders. Now these are devices, and there's one that you can see just there. These are devices that listen to your Wi-Fi and then retransmit the Wi-Fi. So essentially you can extend the range of the signal. You have your router in one room, you have your Wi-Fi extender just on the edge of the range of your router, and that allows you to transmit it even further distances. And then the other is called a power line adapter. And what that does is kind of magic, really. It takes your internet signal from your router and it connects it through a little device that you plug into your power socket in the wall. So it converts your internet and it runs it down through your mains wiring in your house. It sounds insane, but it actually works. And so these are two things that you can do. Now, the problem with Wi-Fi adapters and the problem with power line adapters is there are, like I say, there are complications. So power line adapters, you need to be on the same ring circuit in your house in order for them to work. And the Wi-Fi adapters, you know, you're still using radio waves, you're still using radio transmission. So all of the problems we had with Wi-Fi in the first place, you'll still have with extenders. But sometimes they can be really helpful. So that's the best you can do with Wi-Fi. The most important thing is to learn to love your router. Get it in the right place. Get it as close to you where you work, where the kids work. That will give you the best bang for the buck. If you can't do that, look to those other devices. So that's it. 3 simple things that anyone can do to improve your connection to the internet and thereby improve your remote schooling experience. Remember, it's just as simple as rebooting your router. It's about ditching Wi-Fi if you can. And if you can't ditch Wi-Fi, get that router as close as possible to where you work. And I guarantee you'll see an improvement in your connectivity, or you'll see your stress levels go down, and you'll see your kids' enjoyment of remote schooling go right up. Thanks for joining. I really hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it useful. We'll be back again with more technology top tips to help you make your remote schooling experience the best it can possibly be. I've been Dave Coplin. You've been wonderful. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again next time.